All right, everybody, welcome back to this vaguely named Milan podcast. I'm Martino Puccio, alongside me, Matt Santangelo. We are in the home stretch of the Serie A season, just 2 matches left, and one of those 2 matches is an epic matchup, Matt. Juve, Milan. We see a Juve points deduction in the middle of the week, a -10 coming in for Juve, catapults Milan back into the top 4. Essentially, Milan are in fantastic position for this. We're going to be previewing the match, but really the biggest topic of conversation in general has to be the top 4 and what that means for Milan and all the potential scenarios in which this club can make it. So, from our good friends at Sempre Milan, technically I'm a part of them, have a fantastic article detailing basically every possible scenario in which Milan can make it into the Champions League next season. I was texting with Anthony Torgrud, a good friend of ours, yesterday. I was like, I'm nervous, man. I have nothing but negative thoughts like I usually do. It's very funny because whenever we're in top 4 races, like 2 years ago, you knew this, I was not confident about making top 4. Last year, we played Sassuolo on the last day where we could very easily lose the title. I said, we're going to smash them, and we did. So either way, don't go off of my feelings. It's clear that I don't know much when I'm like this. So anyways, Matt, here are the various scenarios. Milan win against Juventus, Milan in. Milan draw against Juve. Atalanta do not win against Inter, which is going to be taking place in a couple of hours. And Roma do not win against Fiorentina. And then there's also Milan draw against Juventus and against Hellas Verona. And Atalanta do not win both matches. Those are the scenarios in which mathematically Milan secure top 4. Again, you could read the entire article on supermilan.com if you haven't read it like right now. We will put the link in the bio for that in case you forget. Matt, so as far as that goes, how are you feeling? Those are pretty good scenarios and likely scenarios in which Milan can make top 4. What are your vibes around this?
I think when we did our last recording, you mentioned like what are my feelings about getting top 4 after the result, and we kind of speculated what sort of punishment Juventus was going to have, and I think I said a 6 out of 10, right? Which I think, all things considered, given how Milan have played in 2023 and in a lot of recent fixtures against some of these provincial sides, is pretty respectable. Like 60% that they'll make it, but with the punishment coming down to Juventus this week. And obviously Juventus looking completely flat and uninspiring and affected, frankly, by the outcome of the investigation and the punishment against Empoli. I'm feeling pretty good. I think, when you look at the lineup that we projected to put out there versus what's going on with Juventus, Dusan Vlahovic, some of the other key guys probably aren't going to be able to go as well. And given their form and given all the uncertainty around that club with Max Allegri and ultimately what their fate's going to be going for next season, I feel pretty good that at the very least we'll get into top 4. Now, I'm not going to say we're going to smash them like we did earlier in the season when we were in New York for that game. The vibes were completely different as far as, what Milan fans were hoping for the season, right? We played that game against Juventus. We completely played them off the pitch. And everyone's thinking, like, we could actually repeat. Like, we're a dominant team. We're not dominant, but at least domestically, we're a pretty strong contender for a title again. So I think the vibe is different coming into this game. I think that Milan will steady the ship. We will get a positive result here. I'm not going to say win, but I do think we're going to play well enough in this match that's going to give Milan fans some confidence that we're going to get the job done. If it's not this game, it's going to be the next game.
Yeah, so an extra day of rest as opposed to what Juventus got, Milan full week of rest. I think when we have this 11, I know minus Benacer, you see how much better they are in general, that especially in Olivier Giroud is going to be one of them. Rafael Leao coming off of that injury he's had. We see Sandro Tonali on rest, just a completely different player. I agree with you. No Vlahovic for this one, regardless of what his form is, just the sheer threat and what he does off the ball. I think it does matter. Juve fans might be a little bit more harsh because of the expectations around his price tag. We even saw, the name is escaping me on who was mocking him during the Empoli match.
Henderson?
I
got the full name, but
it's not obviously Jordan Henderson, but yes, but Henderson was mocking him of Empoli. Empoli would just completely beat them down. Juve looked lifeless. Obviously, no Fagioli, I think, is a big loss in their midfield. People don't want to talk about that. Outside of Rabiot, I think in form wise, he's actually been their best midfielder in terms of form. Locatelli is Locatelli is very much what he was kind of like at Milan, except a little bit more consistent. When Locatelli is on his high and playing well, he's a very nice player. When he's poor, he's making bad decisions. He's picking up yellow cards. He's very volatile. As you can see, the 11 here, Moretti, talented kid, but that's what he is. He's a kid. He's still making some of those mistakes. Kostic has been fantastic this season.
Yeah.
By far, Juve's best signing. I think Bremer has been very good for them as well, reliable. That back three, not really the greatest. You see Quadrado somehow surviving like a cockroach in a nuclear war, starting for Juve. And then again, Di Maria, you cannot doubt what that man can do. And Milik, again, as you know, as a Polishman, reliable, but can be very inconsistent at times. But again, you could argue he's been their best striker this season. This isn't the greatest of Juve lineups. I will say, if we're looking at it on paper, Milan should be able to beat this.
Mm-hmm.
But my question to you is with this is like morale-wise. I've talked to a bunch of Juve fans. Shout out to Tony Malace, Luventino, a couple of others. They don't feel like this team is there together, that they're really prepped and ready for this moment. It's kind of like Allegri is calling out some of these players publicly. They're playing poorly. Like, what do you see happening? Like, is this the type of match where Juve come out like this? Because again, if we go back, as we have in the ticker on the bottom, you and I went into New York City where we met our good friend Alessandro Florenzi. Shout out to Peter Morgan for this. Milan dominated Juve 2-0. We were with your brother and Rene Rincon, by the way, as well. So I don't want to forget everybody. But hey, Meta World Peace. There was actually a lot of people.
Yeah, it was
but anyways, it was domination, Matt. I mean, it really wasn't close in that one. The scoreline was irreflective of what was happening on the pitch. Do you see more of the same? I think Milan's going to come out with strong energy in this. They know that they finished this, they could finish the job. We'll see what happens with Inter Atalanta, but go ahead. How do you view Juve's mentality going into this match?
It's difficult, right? Because I think we talked about this many times. Even on the last recording, where despite all their uncertainties and investigations and the future of Allegri, like they were on the field, just strictly on the basis of what they did on the pitch as far as results. They're a second place team, right? You remove the punishment, right? You remove that. Results on the field, they were in second place and they were almost a shoo-in for top four.
Yep.
Right? So at the end of the day, like, yeah, the punishment will obviously knock them down a couple pegs and puts them in more in like that Europa League conversation. But at the end of the day, this still is a team that, in my view, the way they're structured under Max Allegri, I still think they could be difficult to break down. And you and I know, right, like the game plan to stymie Milan and to ultimately keep them in check is centered around typically two players. Mostly one, because it's kind of tied to the second player getting his service in, and that's Rafael Leao. Yep. If you can cut down him and keep him from going off and having a sort of Napoli-like performance, then I think Juventus are going to be in a position where they'll be in this game. If Rafael Leao is running rampant and he's putting Juve defenders on posters and just dribbling and doing everything we know he's able to do, I think that's going to be a major issue for Juventus. I think going forward, which is what Milan like do, that's where they're going to be able to drum up some chances. And we haven't talked about Brahim Diaz in this recording yet. This is a player that his last two performances, or two of his more recent performances against Juventus, one was the goal that he kind of absolutely skinned Bonucci in the reverse fixture. And then even a couple seasons ago, when we were vying for top four, he had that big goal to help put
his right foot finish towards the end of the first half. It just
that curling finish, like a very, very nice goal. And that's something that I expect from Brahim in this game. One of his final matches, potentially. It looks as though that multiple sources are saying Milan want him, but
who knows? Yeah,
it could be Asensio on the way out, and Brahim being that replacement, which would be interesting, right? Because I think ultimately that's the way that Real Madrid work with certain players, right? They kind of ship them out. They'll have another club develop.
I think it's a downgrade. I think it's crazy.
I mean, who knows though? Like, I think in that league, we've talked about it. Spain's a little bit more open for a player like Brahim that might suit him better, and he has his best statistical season this year. I think 6 goals, 7 assists. So
and big game matches. The antithesis of Giroud, man. Again,
matches.
Shout out to Maddie. I don't know if you saw this clip on Sempre Milan, but Madison, Ali, and Torgrid were talking about We were very happy with the performance against Sampdoria. Giroud got his hat trick. That's phenomenal. Giroud has 12 league goals this season, four of which have come against Sampdoria. A third of his goals have come against the worst side in the league. Whereas Brahim Diaz, almost every single time he steps up and plays well, Spurs in the Champions League. I don't care what you think about Spurs. Spurs are still a Europa League qualifying type team, competitive team in the best league in the world. And on top of it, we're in the knockout stages of the Champions League. Banter them, meme them all you want. The difference is that was still pretty quality side. Brahim steps up. Brahim plays well against Napoli in multiple games. Against Inter, obviously just not the same, not that type of matchup for him. But almost every single big name matchup this season, Brahim Diaz has played well. I just want to go back to your Rafael Leao point. Look at who we have on the right here. Juan Cuadrado, Federico Gatti, slower, older players that, in my opinion, if they're doubling him, that's the best chance that they have. Going forward, Di Maria, they're going to have to rely on heavily offensively, in my opinion. But if you have three players in that triangle right here, as you could see my mouse, with Cuadrado, Miretti, and Gatti, you have to have those three players on Leao the entire time. And Matt, how many of these guys are susceptible to yellow cards? And if Milan get out in open space, like you mentioned, Brahim Diaz, Rafael Leao, virtually unstoppable. Inter far better organized in defense, in my opinion. Despite that, I think Darmian would take him any day over Gatti. Dumfries is clearly better than Cuadrado, and he's not coming off of an injury at this point. We still saw he was doing well enough to play the majority of that match against Sampdoria. That's going to be tough. I think other players for Milan right now are in form. If we could just look at this 11, basically the same back four that we have set up. Krunic is good enough for this one. Salamaker's deservedly and finally getting back into the starting 11. I'm actually very happy about that. If you would have told me that 18 months ago that I'm saying I'm very happy about Salamaker's being back in the 11 against Juventus, you probably would have called me crazy. But Matt, I think this 11 is good enough. Chow back in there, getting this deserved start. He's just been phenomenal. I've been rarely impressed with him on his on-ball technical ability. He's had a couple of passes that I've seen are just fantastic. I think Milan's going to score from a set-piece corner kick in this game. I really do. So I like that. But, man, I'm telling you right now, it's number 8, 10, and 17 that are going to be able to win this match for Milan. I really do. I think they're going to be the ones to make that impact. But, again, no Chiesa, no Vlahovic because of injury. If you see Chiesa come on, he scored last week. There's just something there that just the vibes are low.
He's not there yet. I think it's tough though, coming like a player like that of that quality. When he was at the heights of the Euro run that Italy went on, right, yeah, and his first couple seasons at Juventus, I mean, he put on a clinic against Milan too, where he scored like a really nice goal end to end. He's just a really quality player. But he, for whatever reason, maybe it's more the mental aspect. When you come back from a serious injury, you know this, right? When we talk about other sports when we're not talking about football, but it's difficult for you coming back from serious injury after being out so many months to completely just let yourself go and let those legs do their job after surgery.
Trust yourself.
Trusting yourself, having that confidence to make those darting runs and those lung bursting runs that Chiesa can do when he gets in behind. He's technical. He can dribble. He is one of the more
two-footed,
top players, top talents that Italy has had in recent years, in my opinion, based on his potential. But I think the player that you didn't mention, and I think we talked about the sort of left side of this Juventus team and how Leao could potentially exploit that. Teo Hernandez. I know he's been very up and down, very sporadic with some of his runs, some of his performances. Weeks ago, he had that great goal against Lazio. So obviously, he's more than capable of still being able to pull that out of nowhere, even when he's not in his best form. So I think he's someone to definitely watch in this game. If you're able to get the top type of performance out of those two, arguably your probably most dangerous players when they're on is Leao, yes, but also Teo Hernandez when he's able to overlap, use his physical presence, body players off the ball, and make those big, heavy runs into the opposing end. I think Milan will have opportunities in this game to score, and it's never been a matter of opportunities for Milan, right? We've pulled up the numbers. We've beaten this thing to a pulp. They need to just exploit it. They did it last weekend against Sampdoria. The caveat being a relegated Sampdoria side, right? So they have to show up in this match. They've played Juventus very well in recent fixtures against them. I think
past few seasons they've been fantastic.
Yeah. And even as a younger team, I think like they've shaken off, in my view. I know against Inter have had our number, but more or less against some of the top sides in Serie A, we've sort of shaken off this whole like, oh, it's Juventus, oh, it's Napoli, like we're gonna be on edge or we're not gonna be that confident.
Yeah.
I mean, can you point to besides Inter, can you point to a game against a top 6, 7 team that, maybe the Lazio game, the first leg, but we were in awful form, that Milan haven't showed up and haven't played anything well? I mean, they played Atalanta twice. They played it pretty solid. The Napoli games,
Came back, scored in that one. I think we dominated them on the 2-0 win.
that was the
at
Benacer
Atalanta.
goal, right?
Benacer goal,
Yeah.
he hit it off the left side of the post. It was an
Yeah.
incurling shot.
The first game against Lazio was an absolute bloodbath, but the game against them, we commanded that game from the very beginning. So
I think
I don't
Fiorentina actually, right, would probably be the next closest team that we struggled
probably
against, which is weird.
probably
Yeah.
yeah. So
Speaking of which, Roma in front, just to
I'll
let
shut
people
out. Yeah.
know, El Shaarawy scored. I really want to bring that up as a
I
topic,
think
but
he's got.
the sources aren't good though. That's all
I
I'll
know.
say.
I think he's got, I think, 7 goals on the season, and people are going to look at his stats and be like, "Oh, he's played 24 games." I'm like, "You think he's only played like 1,300 minutes?"
Minutes. It's
Minutes.
always the minutes. It's always
Minutes.
the minutes. Again, people are like, "Oh, injury." Nah, I don't care about injury. Bring him home. Bring him home. Dog's only 31, by the way, or turning 31 in October. I think
Yeah.
October 28th is his
As
birthday.
a backup on a free transfer that knows the league, come on. And you know he's going to have a little bit of this chip on his shoulder.
Knows the club.
You know
Grew
he's
up
going
as
to have
a
a chip
fan.
too. He's going to have that chip on his shoulder. Like, he's going to want to come back and be like, "All right, like I left with unfinished business. I didn't do what I thought I could do at this club." But now he's part of a Milan that would be part of a Milan.
You were born in 1992 yourself, right?
Yeah, so he's like,
he's your age.
He's
Grew up
just
a
like
Milan.
me.
Grew up a Milan fan. Half Italian. Also grew up a huge Kaká fan. So essentially, you are Stefan El Shaarawy.
Yeah, I'm
signature haircut. Yeah.
Yeah, we're the same person.
No, I mean seriously, if you remember El Shaarawy at his peak before, the injuries started to pick up and all that stuff, that was just a player. And talk about big games. He stepped up big time for Roma this season. Consistently, just always, even today. Today's a huge match. For them, they just can't lose this. Milan, it would benefit them if Fiorentina could tie this. It's just 1-0. It's going to go in halftime for that. But I'm just saying, Tutto Sport was really the only connection to it. I think El Shaarawy should come home. I think if Milan were to offer something in fair wages and say, "Hey, we would like you to join," because honestly, left wing options are going to be what? Chaka Troy, not ready.
Daniel, realistically, where else would he like? I think he's at the part of his career where he's not going to go abroad. Like, he's already been
abroad. He was in China, I believe, right?
China, I think in China. So
he was in China before he went back to Roma.
He's, it would make some sense as a backup for free. You don't have to spend.
Go back to the club, dude. Listen, look, ready, guys? I just Googled Stefan El Shaarawy's name on Google, and look at the first things that pop up. Okay, there's no Roma jersey there. I'm just saying. Listen, I think this is the type of player. His mother's name is Lucy. My mother's name is Lucy. You know what? He has to come back for simply myself and Sant'Angelo. Yeah, again, not the greatest of links, but that's just one name I wanted to bring up. I don't really want to get too much in the transfer market type of things. The only things that we've kind of heard loosely that are kind of concrete are Brahim Diaz. They want to renegotiate to try and get him back. We'll see what happens. It's kind of just been so many different reports with that. Daichi Kamada, there have been reports that he has been given his priority to Milan, but Milan have not offered him anything at this moment in time. Prediction time, though, since we're about 20 or so minutes into this, Matt. Kind of feeling a 1-1 draw. I wouldn't be shocked at a win for Milan. I think this one will be closer than some think. The way Juve are just, it's hard to get past that Empoli feeling. And I think it's also really hard for me, or maybe some other people that are not Juventini, that just always in the back of our head, and what we saw in Bundesliga today, is that that's still the boogeyman. Juve are still scary no matter what. There's still Allegri there. There's still some of those champions that they have. But if you ask Juve fans, that ain't the vibe. And honestly, the people to trust in this situation are the fans that follow them closely every single day. I would have to agree with them. I kind of get where they're coming from here. After you see that performance against Empoli, and again, so like the way I see it, Chiesa gets that goal back. I know you were watching a good amount of it, but I don't know how closely. They get the goal back, and then you're like, okay, maybe they do something because it's like 3-1 at that point. Empoli come back and get another goal.
Yeah.
The second you score on Juve first and the game is open, Juve is done for. They can't do it. They can't play. Under Allegri's system, they just cannot do that. Juve, the majority of the time, have to be up 1-0 and hope the other team doesn't pressure them enough that they could just set up in their defensive system. And again, with Juve, what they would need in this, a 1-0 win would not be enough for them to say we go down to a tiebreaker type scenario. They have to beat Milan on the head-to-head. Milan, again, up 2-0 in that scenario. There's just so many different things that Juve need to do. This game is open. I think that favors Milan. That clearly favors Rafael Leao and Theo Hernandez and Tonali. So yeah, I think vibes are low at Juve. We'll see what happens this summer. There's rumored, again, by the way, 90 million euro in losses. So there's potentially a huge sale.
Yeah.
I think Vlahovic is gone. I think you and I have said this. I don't see how he survives this. Production wise, it's not working. I know publicly Elkan is saying that he's staying.
But that's just to cover his value and
exactly. I think if you keep Allegri, 100% gone. I think if Allegri stays, oh, sorry. Yeah. I think if Allegri leaves, then I think there might be some chance that he stays. But if I'm Juve, considering what I've seen over the past 2 seasons that you've had him now, you cannot simply afford to risk losing him for less value. I think if you can get a good price from Chelsea, because I think Chelsea are going to sell some players that are clearly not fitting into that project. They raise some funds. I think they sell him. Di Maria is not returning, according to Nicolo Schira.
Paredes is going back. We know that.
Paredes as well. I think they're just and Marco Messina was saying this. He and a few other Juve fans don't want to see what similar that we saw our Milan doing. Older players, high wages, not much of the younger top talents. Juve way better in the youth talent at the time, and I think they handle it better than we did. But there's a lot of key decisions to be made. They don't have a sporting director right now. The guy who's calling a lot of these shots is Massimiliano Allegri. We'll see if that backfires on them. Ultimately, I'm going with a 1-1 draw. You have.
I have 1-1 too. I just think that you know what it is too. The reason why, and I said it, in the previous recording or this previous segment, that I feel like we'll play well. We're not going to play. There's a difference between like a 1-1 draw where like we look sloppy and it's like a penalty and it's like, oh, we didn't do anything. I think we'll play really well. I just really always have doubt about us being able to take our chances. And I know Sampdoria, we did that. The chances were plentiful. We took advantage of what we need to take advantage of. But I think at the same time, like, do I really think that this game is going to be presented to Milan and where they can get multiple goals and it'll be one of those games? I just don't see it. I think that Milan will have some chances. Some will go awry. They'll have their look. They'll get one goal. I do think that Juventus are going to get one as well. And for that reason, I think it's going to be 1-1. But I think if you ask Milan fans given how we've been playing, would you take a 1-1 result away to Juventus? Some might be disappointed in that because of Juventus' situation.
Yeah.
But I think we have to kind of be realistic with ourselves and where Milan have been at for much of the season.
They go to Torino. It's a tough spot.
It's still a tough place to play. Juventus got absolutely punched in the teeth on that was that Tuesday. They got the punishment and then they got absolutely battered by Empoli away. They have to. I find it hard to believe they're not going to come back, returning home, giving everything that's happening, and not have some sort of pride in their performance and put forth a decent effort. So I think 1-1 is a pretty fair result.
Maybe we've seen crazier things because when that 3-0 result happened a couple of years ago, I thought, no way, Cristiano Ronaldo, we're in Turin. Like,
yeah,
I just didn't think it. I think it's just a different vibe. And I think there's some parallels to what Milan and Inter were a few years back, where I think we might just be giving a little too much credit because of the name. And I'll be honest, I am giving them that credit because I do think I think that's just how big clubs work. But there's something eerily off with them.
First 15 minutes, though. The first 15, 20 minutes is going to ultimately dictate this game. If Milan are able to get started quick, they're able to get Leao in space, and they're able to spring forward and be able to
And
have
that's
those
the thing,
opportunities.
right?
I think that if they're able to strike within the first 15, 20 minutes, obviously this game shifts in a much better position for Milan to get a victory here. Because again, to your point, like you don't want Juventus getting cozy in a defensive shell and being able to keep the game in front of them.
Yeah.
That's where Milan, even against smaller teams, they don't do that. They love to have those counterattacking opportunities, spring the ball into Leao. I mean, look at a lot of the goals that Leao scores, right? Like the game against Napoli, ball gets into space.
So many different types of goals, man. I mean, the chip goal, the left-footed finish, the finishes you see against Inter.
Base.
Matt, and I'm just thinking about it now because I'm like, okay, let's play devil's advocate. Rafael Leao, since the return of the international break, can you name me 5 players better in the world? No, you can't. You can't. You're not going to be able to.
Yeah.
I'll give you Lautaro. I'll give you Kevin De Bruyne. I'll give you Erling Haaland. Show me another one. There isn't. Maybe Victor. Victor, not really. Victor was like hotter before the international break, and he was obviously injured. Victor is still incredible.
Title was dusted at that point anyway.
Exactly. For me, Rafael Leao is just like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I think too, there's something about there's something to be said about Leao becoming in this team. Like the maturity's there, obviously. The maturity in his performances is there.
Have you seen the Maldini interview? Because it would back up what you're about to say, because I know what you're about to say.
I think basically like as a player, you can see the way he's like talking, the way he's giving interviews, the way he's playing on the field. His games are more, his performances and his play is more polished. It's more tight. It's more, it's less up and down. Like there's less ebbs and flows and there's something to be said about the past season and even this season, second half Leao. Like when the lights are brightest and Milan needs something, this guy has done it in the Champions League.
That's right. I forgot I tweeted those stats.
You know what I'm saying? Like he's becoming a big game player despite a lot of the things being against him when he doesn't really have much support at times in the attack.
I think that Inter stuff is so fugazi, man. To talk on that real quick, the Inter it's such bullshit, okay? We want to go over the 3 last games against Inter. First of all, Milan, horrendous form. I'm sorry. You drop Lautaro and you swap Leao with these teams. Lautaro ain't doing that, man. He ain't scoring the same amount of goals he scores at Inter. Anybody with a brain that could turn it on knows that, okay? This is just true. Like, you can't just say the attack is terrible, the talent is lacking, and then say this player is not good enough, despite the fact that he's carrying them into Champions League, despite the fact that he carried them to a title, despite the fact that he destroyed you guys. The second he has a semblance of an attacking player next to him, he feasts on Inter. He feasts on them. And it's just absolutely factual. On top of the fact that he was also a kid when he joined. Like, if we compare on paper, if Inter fans always want to boast about how much better your squad is, then talk about how fair it is when Rafael Leao clearly doesn't have the same amount of help that the attacking players and offensive players that Inter have. And I know my good friend, our good friend Uncle Sharma admits that too and realizes that. I don't think he's on that page. This is just for the dummy Inter fans that have no idea what you're talking about. Okay, so I want to just go talk about it real quick. First of all, misses leg 1 of the Champions League. The 3-0 Supercopa, the team could not have been worse. They did not help him out. He was playing poorly as well. Whatever. It's Supercopa. Then we'll go into the league play. He didn't even start. They didn't even start their best player in the derby against Inter. And they changed up formations and they said, go play center forward, a position that is not your position, that you thrive in. And they did that without Benacer in that match as well. So not only do they have without their best progressive ball carrying midfielder, they do it when he's coming off the bench and Inter's protecting a lead. Are you kidding me? What is he supposed to do? Then again, in the Champions League, coming off of an injury, I said this, Inter, you're sitting back 2-0. Who is the biggest threat? How do you prep for this? You do it by stopping Rafael Leao. You stop Leao, you go into the Champions League final. And that's exactly what happened. Okay? So I don't think that's reflective of who he is as a player. Because when the game is open and when he has help, he will destroy you and you cannot defend him one-on-one. You simply cannot. And Napoli had everybody. Okay, so I don't want to hear it. That guy carried the ball 70 yards down the field. In the Maradona. How many people can say they did that in a match like that? In a match like that against a team like that?
Yeah.
Matt, the only other times you see that are the top Juve teams in the past that we saw in the past decade with their top players, and then you have to go back to the 80s. Okay, and back to the comments about Paolo Maldini was saying, when Maldini is kind of sitting down in an interview, and if you know the history of Milan and all the teammates that Maldini has had over the course of his career, the best players of all time,
Yeah.
literally. Okay, and if the guy is sitting there saying in his 50s, where he has to take a breath and just think about the type of player that he is and how unique he is. And I'm using Maldini's words in this sense. What does that tell you?
Yeah.
Like the kid and growing sense, Matt, considering the team that he has, and every single week I see this stuff go down. If he stays here and there's a proper team around him and he wins a good amount relative to the talent that he has on his team, no joke, this could be one of the greatest Milan players ever. And I mean that
Yeah.
because just as an individual, what he is doing with these sides, we're gonna be looking back on it and say, "Holy shit!" Because we were,
Top 15 in the Ballon d'Or too. Last, like, was it 14th or 13th? Like that's impressive.
I think he was top 25 is what he was
Uh,
last year. He didn't finish top 15.
he was pretty high. I don't
He
have the
was
number.
top 25. I'll go look at the list. He was no way he was top 15. Let's
I
see.
don't
20.
see it.
This is interesting then. Pandora rankings. The top 30 full list I'm gonna get for you right now. Oh, you were right. Yeah. Was he really?
Yeah.
Tied for 14th.
For top 15 in the Ballon d'Or,
Magnan was 25th.
given some of the players that he finished ahead of at a very young age.
Do you want me to read off some of the names that I could for your perspective? What do you say?
Okay. Yeah.
Bernardo Silva, Harry Kane, Cristiano Ronaldo, Luis Diaz, Virgil van Dijk, Fabinho, Casemiro, ahead of the likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold, if you want to do that, Kimmich, Rudiger. I mean, João Cancelo at that point was just incredible.
I mean, on.
Those are some big names it was his age 23 season, correct? So, I mean, dude, where do you think he falls now for the Ballon d'Or next year? It's
I
going
think
to be
it's
coming in with zero
trophy.
trophies.
He'll still be top 20, I think.
You have to, right? Like,
he'll still be top 20. I think he'll definitely still be top 20 because I think the vote I mean, it's a voting thing at the end of the day. Like we know the voting is very, it could be very like very much a popularity contest. But I think he's a player that, given his skill set, the way he plays,
yeah.
And the sort of like the bravado, the type of personality he has, I think that always bodes well for him in those sort of like competitions and votings. So yeah, I mean, this guy's a top player. If we get some sort of additional reinforcement in the attack, I think his numbers only go higher. What is he on? 13 goals, something like 8 assists.
Yeah, sorry. I'll pull it up for you.
Like,
Yeah, 13 goals, 8 assists in the league. He has 1 goal in Champions League. I think it's like five or 6
performances
assists
in the Champions League, man of the match in the Champions League against top teams, deep run. I mean, come on, like it doesn't
Was it against Zagreb where he carried the ball like 60 yards and scored? Some of the worst defending you'll see. Don't get me wrong, but
look at some of the best players. It's interesting, right? Because I think we'll talk about how much players score goals against. Oh, that's against this club. It's like, yeah, but historically, and I'm not trying to make these comparisons, but like if you look at who Messi, Ronaldo, some of the best players of all time have dominated, it's typically against provincial sides. Like, how is not every day I mean, Ronaldo and Messi are the outliers here, but
of course,
most good players terrorize bad teams. That's just how it is. You're not seeing players. You're not seeing Lautaro Martinez scoring 4 goals against Napoli. He might score 3 or 4 goals against Spezia, and that's okay.
Less dribbles completed than last year. If we actually want to compare, it's pretty interesting. So he has 26 less dribbles completed in 5 less attempts. Way more efficient last season. I think it's just the approach that has happened to defend him this season. I think teams have totally.
And look at his numbers still. He
Exactly.
doesn't take penalties, Martino.
No, no. And he also creating chances to get him in the percentile. So expected assisted goals is at the 81st percentile. And if you do non-penalty expected goals plus assisted goals, he's in the 88th percentile.
Yeah,
Very few
he's
play
electric.
in again, his best partner in his life at Milan. They've both been guys over the age of 36.
Mhm.
36 or older.
Mhm.
Giroud and Zlatan.
Yeah,
Successful take on 97th percentile. Yeah, just a phenomenal player. He's actually very good in the air as well, 90th percentile.
he's a
Um,
big guy. He's people underestimate his size and strength. Like he's just like 6'2". He's strong. Like when the ask Napoli when he just completely body. I forgot who it was. Is that Ragmani for the goal for the pass to Giroud for the goal? Like absolutely just shoot him off, and he
that
got it
that
all, man. He's got it all.
that second goal he scored when he does the hit feint drop and he just finishes on
Yeah,
his left.
it's frightening to think the heights he can reach if he's a little bit more polished in his finishing.
I mean, he's
Frightening.
essentially Vinny. He's Vinny Jr. That's who it is. That's if he's literally just more prolific, that's who he is.
Yeah.
It's the best winger in the world. Dude, honestly, Mo Salah's still top two, bro. I'm sorry. Anyone who disagrees with that, I think you're bad shit. After what you see this season, no, seriously.
Yeah.
He lost everybody. Midfield, garbage. Defense, nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
Mo Salah carrying. What a player. What a player. But that should wrap it up. We went way over do
We
what we
always do.
wanted to. Yeah, but it happens.
It's
When you talk about Rafael Leao. Follow yourself at Matt_Santangelo. A couple other things you're coming out with before the summer starts kicking off and all that.
Trying to get more written content out there. Again, with the season being kind of winding down, this has been our biggest focus of late, which is awesome. I love doing video content. I love being able to put this out there. And a lot of the comments we've seen on YouTube have been awesome. So thank you to some of the Anthony, Fabio. I know you guys are regulars in the comments and supporting what we do. So thank you for that. But anything I'm working on, radio appearances, SiriusXM, TalkSport, all that information can be found on my Twitter at Matt_Santangelo.
Yeah, and you can follow me everywhere at Martino Puccio. Gotta say, been in the gym. I am dropping weight like a fly, man. That's just
You're on that atomic priority bulk, dude.
Bulk? No, not bulk, but I'm just.
But now you're doing a.
You know when just like you lay down and you just don't see a hill.
Yeah.
On your bed.
You can't put snacks on.
That's been the first time in a very long time. I think Pippo Inzaghi was the manager the last time. I wasn't able to do that. And for reference, I only was like at 150. Anyways, go follow all that stuff. Oh, by the way, if you're interested in betting, if you're in the North American area, BetUS has sponsored my YouTube channel. I'm very proud of myself to getting to this point. If you sign up for a minimum of $50, that's all you have to do. I get $100 for that. There's a code JOIN125 when you sign up for that. If you are interested, just hit me up on the DM, comment in the comment section below. Give us your prediction for this match below. Will Milan make top four? As of right now, I haven't seen any updates regarding the score. I still believe it's 1-0 with Roma and Fiorentina. I'm going to try and finish the match after this. Just a really exciting time. If Milan can get into top four, and again, by the way, because I know some people might ask about this, I think Juve have the potential to appeal this decision, but ultimately, I do not see that happening. I think at this point, with the way things are going, I could be wrong. Don't quote me on this. But the way I see these things going, it makes no sense for them to drag this out any further. They might just have to accept this punishment. They've already appealed. Oh, and then on top of it, they have another court hearing on June 15th with the salary maneuvers case. That penalty will be taking effect into the 2023-2024 season. Matt, could be bad. We're looking rumors saying 40-point deduction. 40 points. Okay. Wow. So we'll see what ends up happening with them, who ends up staying. And by the way, just again, one last really quick point. Anthony Torgrud, shout out to him for this. I think there's a very good point being made. This is not 2006 where there are players that are fielding loyalty to this club. Maybe a couple of them, but to have Cannavaro left, but the Buffons, those types of players that are willing to stick around, the Del Pieros, not that type of vibe. I think they'll keep those young kids and they'll grow. we'll see what happens at the end of the day. Best of luck to Milan. Matt, thank you so much for doing this as always, brother. You enjoy your weekend. We'll see what happens. Guys, please like, subscribe, rate, comment. There's no rating anymore on YouTube. Subscribe and all that. We're close to 2K followers. We'll see if we're able to do a post-match tomorrow. It is Memorial Day weekend. If you celebrate Memorial Day weekend and you're in the States, enjoy your very long weekend, and hopefully it comes with a Milan qualification for the Champions League. See you guys next time.